Going beyond the headlines. Asking the questions you want answered. Exploring government policies and how they impact you. We are delving deeper.
Good evening and welcome to Delving Deeper. I'm your host, Kimberly D'Souza. Joining us this evening is the Minister in the Office of the Prime Minister, Communications, Minister Symon de Nobriga. Minister, good evening. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for inviting me, Kimberly. I was waiting to see when my time would have been.
Well, Minister, we had to ensure that, we do due diligence before we brought you in.
I'm just happy to be here.
And of course, joining us is also the Chairman of the National Library and Information System Authority, NALIS, Mr. Neil Parsanlal. Mr. Parsanlal, good evening. Thank you for joining us as well.
Good evening, Kimberly. It's good to be here. It's good always to be with the Minister, talking about the things that matter, really matter to the country.
And Chairman of TTT Limited, Ms. Ronda Francis. Ms. Francis, good evening. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good afternoon, Kimberly. It's nice to be here with you.
Well, I'm going to start with you first, Minister, because there are so many agencies under your ministry. We have NALIS, for example. Yeah. We have TTT Limited. There's also Government Printery. But I want to focus on NALIS first. I will admit we are in the digital age. I mean, everybody has a laptop now. They have their phones. And so people may want to go to Google rather than heading to the public library. So how important do you see public libraries now, given that we are in the digital age?
So I am going to echo one of the first things that the gentleman to my right would have said. You can go to Google and you can type in a question, you can get 1,000 answers. If you go to a library and you ask a librarian, you'll get the correct answer. But it is true that we need to figure out where libraries sit in a modern society. It is no longer just shelves and shelves of books. Of course, we have to incorporate the digital spaces into libraries themselves. But there is, in my opinion, still a need for these buildings, the physical structure to be in communities. And of course, there are also our co-located libraries as well. And I don't know, Neil, if you want to speak a little bit about that as well.
Sure. And like Minister, we are at the board and NALIS extremely excited about everything that's happening in libraries. Mayaro, we really want to use Mayaro as the model going forward, because what we've done really is bring an element of commercialization to the library space, so that libraries can now almost self-fund rather than have to continue depending on subventions from the government. And the same model is going to be used in Diego Martin, and the same model is going to be used in La Joqueta, where we have the library space, but there's also commercial space that are synergistic with libraries. But equally important, while we put up these buildings, these large buildings, is the emphasis on community libraries. And that's where the co-location projects come in. Correct. What we've done so far, we've co-located libraries at the Barataria Community Center, for instance. We're on the Beetham Estate and the Beetham Library, the Mount Hope Mongdor Community Center. There's also a library there. And very recently, when the Belmont Community Center was opened, there's actually another space within the Belmont Library. And what we've done is actually take the libraries into the communities. So rather than have the huge libraries, which are necessary, which are absolutely necessary, we now want to bring the library space much closer to the communities. We believe that the libraries are not just buildings, they're not just books, they're stories. They hold the national treasure. There's a saying, that when an old man dies, a library burns. And we want to ensure that we keep all those stories together. The digitization of libraries, in each of those new libraries that we're going to build, there's tons of space for computer space, laptops, where people can come in and actually use the libraries. But also, if you have a library card at the moment, if you join the library and you get a library card, you could stay in the comfort of your home and borrow a book from the library. And with some of the initiatives, we are going to sign an MOU with the Peruvian government. Part of that is linking NALIS Library and the Trinidad and Tobago National Library with the National Library of Peru. And we will do that for a number of other libraries, a number of other countries, so that with that library card that you have, you now have access not just to what is local, but you have access to libraries all over the world now. And that's the trust that NALIS is going into.
Now, I like that we are on the topic of young people because, of course, coming out of the SCA exams, we had the revelation that approximately 9,000 students would have scored below 50%. And I'm wondering, how does literacy factor into the building of these libraries?
This question resonates with me because I have just had a son go through the process of SCA. I saw the impact of the time that kids had to spend away from school. I saw that in my children, who both were impacted by it. My daughter, who you affectionately understand I refer to as a teen, and my preteen, both face those challenges. I want to tell you that there are multiple inputs to that. Of course, we are seeing the Ministry of Education acknowledging the reality of that, and they have now launched their August revision program, which is really geared towards dealing with those children who are moving on to secondary school. But of course, you are seeing the impact in terms of literacy and numeracy on their scores as they go into the schools that they're going to be going into. There is no ignoring the fact that there is a challenge, and that challenge was magnified by the challenges of COVID. But we are moving across ministries to treating with that.
Nearly every public library we have in Trinidad and Tobago is currently engaged in a vacation camp. And those things will go on, throughout the vacation. And I really want to applaud the NALIS staff because they use all their creativity and everything that is available to them to host these camps. But literacy is not just about learning, they put in a book in front of a child. If you go to the young adult library at NALIS, on Abercrombie Street on a Saturday morning, for instance, under normal circumstances, you would see, for instance, children playing video games. You'd see the young adults and they play and they're gaming. Yeah? We are reaching them where they are. But it's not just a matter of them coming and sit and play a game. They must know the story. They must know the characters. They must tell us why people made a particular decision to do this or to do that. In other words, we are using the different media to teach the literacy or to improve the literacy. There's digital literacy now and digital literacy programs, so that where every building that the Minister of Youth Affairs, the Foster Cummins, Honorable Foster Cummins opens, every youth camp, we are going to be involved. NALIS is going to be involved in providing the digital literacy program. We signed an MOU with YTEP, for instance. Again, NALIS, at the forefront of that. And that is to bring that whole digital literacy component to the persons who will access YTEP. Everybody, every student going into YTEP will now have access to the National Library. Every instructor in YTEP will have access to the library and all the research engines and everything that is available from NALIS. And that's where we want to go, that we will meet you where you are. So if you're in a youth camp, we'll be there. If you're attending a YTEP program, we're going to be there. And if you want to come to the National Library and play games, well, then we'll meet you there too. And we will help you to understand what the game is about. Because before you're allowed to play, you have to tell us the plot. You have to understand and be able to talk about that and who are the characters and why the characters developed in a particular way. Why did they make decision A instead of decision B? And the librarians we have in the Young Adult Library, fantastic set of people.
Now, Mr. Parsanlal, was there an award ceremony for authors that you celebrated recently?
We celebrated 62 new authors. It's the 13th edition. And when we looked at, this is, every year NALIS celebrates first-time authors. So if you've written a book, we want to celebrate that because it adds to the national bibliography. We had 62 new authors this year, And not just from Trinidad. We had authors from Canada, we had authors from the USA, nationals living abroad. Of those 62, we still get more women writing stories than men. That's another conversation, to take place. But the different genres of literature that came out, religious, poetry, fiction, non-fiction. And that is how we want to tell, be able to get the stories going, because we are still an oral society. We're still an oral community. And our stories are passed on. We say, by calypsos, our stories are told. But we need to document that now. We need to put those things down on paper. And we want to encourage more and more persons. We celebrated 62 this year. Last year we had a similar number, I believe. And the number is just growing. We actually, the Prime Minister we would have celebrated the Prime Minister, I think, in 2020, 2019, yes, from Mason Hall to Whitehall. First-time author. We need to start documenting our history. We need to start putting the stories down, because when an elderly person dies, a library burns. Anybody who wants to write a story, and we don't business what the story is. Quite honestly, you want to write your story, you want to write your book, come to us. Come to us. We will help you in terms of whether you want to launch it by us, whether you want, any kind of the services, that we will help you. We will help you to do. That's part of what NALIS is there for.
And I was particularly, I have to say, blown away by how diverse the crowd was. I mean, we had authors as young as 25, and we had an author who was 84 years old, first-time author. So it is never too late to start, and it is never too early to start.
Of course. Now, we do have, I'm switching gears a bit, we do have the National Archives, and I know that there are plans to digitize this unit. What is the status on digitizing that entire department?
So there are multiple projects that all fall under the digitization initiatives for the National Archives. I have to tell you, Kimberly, one of the things coming into this portfolio that I had absolutely no concept of is exactly how far-reaching the National Archives, the resources of the National Archives are and can be. So what we're looking at is, again, we have the digitization of government media assets, commonly referred to as the DOGMA project, at NALIS, which is the physical digitization of photographs, of negatives, of audio files of all types, of video files of all types, and ensuring that that media is all digitized in a future-proof state, right? So in a format that we can utilize 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 50 years from now, but also to ensure that it is cataloged in such a way that it can be accessed by our various stakeholders, the various types of researchers, students, people who are just the casual information junkie who's looking, students of history, whether that be real students in the real sense, or the person like me who will hear something and want to find out what that is about. So this was a project that was one of those projects that is commonly referred to as a project suffering from mission creep. It had been going on for, I cannot tell you how long. I want to tell you in various iterations, probably as far back as maybe 12, 15 years. Coming in, was not happy with the rate at which it was going, and I thought it had really to do with the structure of how the project was being done. So we have made some changes. We have broken up the project into smaller parts, because you can imagine how mammoth a task this is. I like to tell my team that there's only one way to eat an elephant, and that is one bite at a time. So what we've done is created bites, and we are going guns now. We have taken the project from where it resided at my ministry, and put it at the National Archives. So therefore, it is also under the physical supervision of our government archivist, and the team there to ensure that what is happening at the rate that it should be, and ensuring that we get value for our money at the rate that we should be getting that value at. And we are also looking at cloud backup to ensure that between on-site, off-site, and cloud, that we are protecting our national heritage. So that is another component. Another thing is our Atom project, which is really geared towards the interface now of those digitized assets, that having stored them properly, we now have to create an interface for our researchers, all other stakeholders, to be able to access it, utilizing any number of means, any number of search parameters, keywords. So that is another big project that is on stream now. All of these projects, I'm happy to say, are on target. So we are looking at projects that are completing either the phases that they're in right now, because you can understand something like Dogma is not going to be completed this year. We are hoping that by the end of next fiscal, we will be well into not just our photographs and negatives, but also getting our audio files and our video files compiled.
Yes.
One of the big projects that I came into and also met is our records inventory management system, which NALIS has engaged a consultant to assist them with. It is the creation of the policy around records inventory management. Now, this is the first step to creating legislation, but this has a far-reaching impact for the digitization of government. Because what we're going to do is look at how does any government department, ministry, division, agency, how do we digitize our assets? Under what are the parameters that we set, so that in the event that anyone has to access that, it can be accessed. But a big part of it is also ensuring that the records are safe in terms of their storage, but also safe in terms of ensuring that they're not shared where they should not be shared.
Of course. Now, Mr. Parsanlal, I'm coming to you because Minister would have mentioned that national heritage. We are celebrating our 60th independence this year. So how important do you think is it to digitize our national heritage so that in 60 years to come, people can be able to access, our national heritage easier, to be able to even create some of those amazing books that you were talking about?
No, this is near and dear to your heart.
No, Kimberly, I think it's just absolutely important that we begin to digitalize, all the information we have. There are collections. NALIS has a number of collections that are sitting and, in paper form and that sort of thing. And therefore it limits the access, to the public. If one wants to study Dr. Eric Williams, for instance, one has to go to the University of the West Indies. When we complete the Dr. Eric Williams Memorial Library, where in the original Trinidad Public Library space, and we can bring all the material, digitalized, all the material, from Dr. Eric Williams.
And we are well on the way to completing that project.
On the way to that. Think about, a tourist coming off a ship and being able to walk into Port of Spain, get to the Eric Williams Memorial Public Library, see the Hall of Justice, see the Parliament, and see NALIS. And just imagine that space, one huge culturally rich heritage space in Port of Spain. And not just that, because when we do the other prime ministers, for instance, the intention is, as we make all those things digital, the collections of the Honorable Kamala Prasad Bissessa, the Honorable Patrick Manning, all our prime ministers from South, the Noor Hassan Ali, the President Noor Hassan Ali, will be located in San Fernando. But because we would have digitalized it, it will be accessed and accessible throughout the country. At the Scarborough Public Library, we'll have the Honorable A.N.R. Robinson, we'll have the Honorable Keith Rowley when he demits office. Their collections will be there. So until we start, the whole process of digitalizing all our information is about making, just increasing access to people. if we don't know, we can't blame the young people now because they don't know the history. We have not passed it on.
Of course.
And NALIS is at the forefront of ensuring that that information is passed on. And we will do all that we can do with the resources that we have available to us to ensure that in 60 years' time, we'll be doing a lot more than we're doing.
Nice. Well, as we are on the topic, and of course, closing thoughts as well for you, Mr. Parsanlal, we are moving towards digitalization in the library. Any other thing we can look forward to, let's say, in the next 5 years?
I think a lot more virtual libraries. So that card, and I really want to encourage people, come to the library, join the library. It's a minimal cost, and you can get your library card in no time. And
I have mine.
Free of charge?
No, it's not.
Oh, how much?
It's not. It will not cost you more than $1 or more than $5.
Right.
So I don't want to give you the exact cost. That and a utility bill, and you can join the library. But you're going to get a lot more virtual libraries. We have as we move into the communities, because the community libraries, the co-located libraries, are about bringing the library in Toko will be different from the library in Diego Martin.
Yes.
In terms of its content, in terms of its look and feel. And that's what we want to do, to ensure that when people go to our library, it's a unique experience in terms of digitization, that you could stay wherever you are now and access, the entire collection. We have EBSCO hosts, we have different search engines, and you can access the entire collections of the National Library. We want people to come to the library, but we also know that in this day and age, people are going to stay from where they are and be able to access the library.
And that's it. Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Parsanlal.
It was a pleasure being here. It's always a pleasure, having discussions with my minister. And I look forward to, to many, many more. Thanks very much, Kimberly.
Of course. Now, Minister, before we get to TTT Limited, and of course, before we get to Information and Communication Division, one of the other agencies that's under your ministry is Government Printry. Can you give us an update on that? How has that been going thus far?
The Government Printry is, again, one of those sort of unsung heroes in the delivery of services by the government to citizens. Government Printry will have an immense number of internal clients, all ministries. TTPS is another huge client for them. And they are doing quite a lot there. If I have to be honest, I think a division that has its challenges, especially because the structure that governs the Printry now has a lot of positions that are no longer applicable in a modern environment where Printry would operate. So we no longer have those people who will put the S and the comma and the one next to each other, creating type and that sort of stuff. So I'm very, very excited about the Government Printry now as they see their role changing, as they themselves embrace digitization, and there is an ongoing process right now to take the Printry from where it was and is, and into bring it into the 21st century. So that is happening right now. It is a very, very challenging time for them. School is opening. We have the not the prospect. There will be an early budget, and of course, the Government Printry is responsible for printing all what we affectionately call the yellow books. So almost every single form that you access in order to be able to get government services is printed by the Government Printry. Every form that you would get in any ministry, in the ticket books from TTPS, when you go to licensing, passports, when we have to do draft estimates coming into budget, when we get all our records for recurrent expenditure, which is, as I said, those are those big yellow books. So a lot of those forms are printed by the Government Printry. The Printry is working towards embracing, as I said before, digitization. So what their interface will be for the public is no longer only going to be, well, you have to come in and pay $3 for this form and $5 for that form, but you will be able to utilize a commercial website that they're in the final stages of finishing, where you can pay online for a form that you will require and be able to get that form in the format that you needed to be able to print to meet all the requirements, all the legal requirements that they would be for that form. I have a lot of hope for where the printry is going, and it is one, as I said, one of those unsung heroes in delivering to the population by the government.
I want to take us back to Holy Thursday a bit, where we had the traffic nightmare along the Western Main Road in Cocorite. Right now, your minister would have come in for heavy criticism. Nobody knew what was going on. It was peak hours. People were coming home and they had this traffic pileup. But then in June, we saw a similar situation, but people were warned beforehand. And so I'm wondering, what were the lessons that were learned in the earlier situation that kind of preempted that sort of communication that would have happened in June?
So that day was not a happy day. But the truth is, it wasn't a single day. I think we had a few things happening there. One, that it was almost a perfect storm. Two, that we saw what the challenges in government communications can be. And one of the major challenges is siloed communication. So the Ministry of Works and Transport would have seen what their requirement was and would have been executing that communications effort without understanding where the other delivering agencies would have fit. WASA would have seen their role as in terms of fixing the leak that had caused the problem in the first place, but not understanding their how a synergized environment would have improved the communications effort. When we came out of it, I can tell you that day was a lot of back and forth between the Minister of Public Utilities and myself, ensuring that we tried to get information belatedly, to be very honest, to the population and trying to utilize all the channels that we had. The biggest lesson learned here is that in delivering a communications effort to the population, we need to break silos. We need to ensure that every player in communications across government sees themselves not only as a member of a ministry's team or an agency's team, but also as part of a whole of government communications effort. And we are doing that. We have, I know I'm going here on that. I know we have one of our big things is that we have started something called, or revamped initiative called Communities of Practice. And in Communities of Practice, every month we bring members of all our communications departments across all of government together to talk about what is happening in the global communications landscape, to bring subject matter experts to improve our efforts, but also to give us space for those departments to learn and to speak to each other. And that is one of the first internal initiatives that we are doing. And I think that that is bearing fruit, because the communications people at Ministry of Works and Transport, and the communications people at WASA and Public Utilities, and the communications people at OPMC, Office of the Prime Minister Communications, all knew each other, all knew the players. So there was an ease of conversation in delivering on that day. And we saw the benefits. And interestingly enough as well, Kimberly, another example of that sort of teamwork of ministries coming together in order to communicate with the population was actually when we had the approaching tropical
Cyclone
wave,
2.
Tropical Cyclone 2,
Yes.
correct, that had been designated a potential tropical cyclone. Yeah. The truth is that, again, we were blessed in that the country did not feel the full impact of that weather pattern, that weather system. But at the time, the Prime Minister, who was out of the country, and Minister Imbert had been acting as the Prime Minister at the time, between the two of them, they would have convened a team of ministers, and we had ongoing conversations. I mean, 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning, 7 in the morning, literally every half hour. What is happening? Getting the information from Met Office, getting the information to ODPM and getting their recommendations, speaking with the disaster management units. And of course, as an MP, and I am an MP, Minister Arari is an MP, Minister Gonzalez is an MP. So we were also speaking with our regional corporations to ensure that, we were getting a feel for what was also happening on the ground. And that was conveyed to the population, utilizing state media. And I know there's always an ongoing question about what is the role of state media. And I think if COVID didn't teach us what the role of state media is, incidents like that show us how important state media is, because we were able to mobilize, get down to TTT, have an impromptu press conference that was carried live not only on TTT but also across all other stations, television and radio, where we spoke to the population, made them aware of what was coming, made them aware of what all the things that were being put in place to address the impact of the impending weather. But even when that was done, when the storm had dissipated, we came back to the population again. Because one of the issues is something that's called turbidity in our watercourses. When you have all this rain, you have watercourses that have churned up, so there's mud and silt, and you see our watercourses brown. But when you have water treatment plants that are taking water from those rivers, they automatically shut down because of the quality of the water. So we then had to come back to the population to explain, okay, we are all safe. However, we do have some lingering issues. You may experience water delivery issues on your line because these water treatment plants are down. This is when you can expect them to be back up, and we will keep on reporting to you. Again, the value of silos being broken, ministries working together and managing any crisis or incident to ensure that the population is informed. And what you always want as any government is an informed population.
Now, Ms. Francis, I want to bring you in here because we've heard ministers take on the importance of state media. And as the chairman of TTT Limited, I was wondering, do you believe that the past 2.5 years would have reinforced the importance for state media?
I would say that the last 2.5 years has definitely reinforced the importance of state media. I like to think of state media as public service media, national media. I mean, we have one television station and we have 3 radio stations. And I first would like to think about what's the mandate before we look at the importance. What's the mandate of TTT? We are a source of government information. We produce and deliver production services for the government and across the sector. And as another area of our mandate, we produce local content and programming.
Now, because we have this local content that's coming out of TTT, how do you think that has helped us in the past 2.5 years?
Before we go to how it has helped us in the past 2.5 years, I wanted also, we are a source of, I want to say that we are a source of credible, trusted information, accurate, relevant, and in terms of helping to deliver on TTT's mandate in terms of local programming, we would normally have a call for content. And in our call for content, we started off with a single producer, but we moved to the call for content, and where we get multiple streams of content coming our way, and therefore we are able to better deliver content that's more palatable for the general population. Additionally, we get a different kind of content that is that content that can be shared across multiple generations. So while we had that monofocus in terms of one person providing, one firm providing content for us, this call for content, and it's quite competitive, and therefore we are able to select the type of content that we deliver. Additionally, when you have that multiple source of content, you get a better deliverable to the population, and people are able to see their work and know that they have participated in delivering content to the population.
One of the mandates that I would have issued to Ronda and the board was to understand the responsibility of state media. I would have grown up at a time where when I looked at television, I saw excellence that looked and sounded like me. So Ricky Tikki, Scouting for Talent, 12 and Under, Teen Talent, Mastana Bahar, Party Time, Indian Variety, Calypso Spectacular, Cross Country, Dateline, all of these things, Panorama, all of these things, Issues Live. I mean, I could go on and on and on. I grew up in a generation where we constantly saw, and very often our heroes were on screen looking at us. At some point, and I think that was really with the advent of other stations coming on board, there was a proliferation of foreign television shows brought into the environment. I have said to TTT that we need to go back to our moorings. We need a state media to understand that for the next generation, we need, and generations to follow, we need to create the images on screen that allow our children to see excellence that looks and sounds like them. I know there are a lot of people my age who have children, and children as children, but whenever they come out of a conversation, they go straight into an accent. Whether that accent is English because they're watching Peppa Pig or American because they're watching some other show. My position is that TTT must see its value there. We must be a home for locally grown content. What Ronda is talking about here is that mandate being manifested.
Now, that's all well and good. We have 12 and Under coming back, and we are seeing that thrust from TTT for local content. But a lot of the conversation in the public domain is that TTT might be a drain on the treasury. And so we know that local content comes at a cost because it has to be authentic. So do you think it is worth the investment at the end of the day?
Ronda, I'm going to spare you from having to answer
I know that.
So, Kimberly, here's the thing, right? TTT's bottom line as state media is different to the bottom line of any of its quote-unquote competitors or any of the other people that are in that landscape. We have a responsibility that goes way beyond whether we make a profit or not. Now, that is not to say that in any organization you want to ensure that your operations are efficient as possible, that you minimize your costs. We want to ensure that wherever avenues are for us to maximize our revenue, we do that. But here's my answer to that. My answer is, as we create content that is inherently Trinbagonian, so the revenue will come because people are going to want to come to it. But my position is that you lead with quality, you lead with your qualitative bottom line to ensure that we are informing not just this generation, but informing future generations. The importance of state media is not always in whether it has turned the dollar or not. It is how are we creating more informed, more patriotic population 20 years from now that sees themselves as inherently Trinbagonian, a population that identifies with this country and wants to amplify that Trinbagonianness in everything that they do. And I think that in creating content that allows a 6-year-old to start identifying as a Trinidadian, as a Tobagonian, as a Trinbagonian, is where you start that conversation and where you start that process.
Yes. And so in that same vein, Ms. Francis, because I want to bring you back in, where do you see TTT Limited going, let's say, in the next 5 years?
In the next 5 years, I'd first talk about our strategic plan. So we are in the process of developing a strategic plan that will take us from 2022 to 2027. As part of that strategic plan, we are going to be focusing heavily on human resources and how we align the human resources to the needs of the organization. How we're going to invest heavily as well in terms of training the organization, reconfiguring the organization in such a way that we are able to manage our freelancers and our stakeholders in ways that might be different from the way that they are managed now. So I would say you would see a different organization, totally digitalized. Digital transformation is going to be at the forefront of everything we do at TTT. And therefore, in the future, the organization is going to have a different look and feel. We've already started, but 5 years from now, we are going to be a different organization. And if I may say,
I'm listening.
if I may say, I think we are going to be a sustainable organization as well, because the different types of activities and plans that we have for the organization could change our income stream. For example, one of the programs that we are intended on having, and it's like a challenge program where we partner with universities and we bring people in, and these people are trained at TTT to be the talent pool for the industry. So we do have some good plans on the horizon, and we aim to have a more conducive environment as well for all our stakeholders. As it stands, we depend heavily on the subvention, but we are working towards sustainability.
And Ms. Francis, when you say sustainability, you're working on profitability as well as we look forward to the next 5 years.
Profitability, yes. We intend to be profitable within the next 5 years. Please don't laugh.
Well, I want to tell you.
Profitability is so important to TTT, because it will give us a sense of self-esteem. It will give the state itself a sense of we have contributed to something that's really bigger than what traditional state media looked like.
Yeah. Well, I want to tell you that is, I'm hearing Ronda saying that here, and that means Ronda is being recorded, because what I'm happy to hear is that even though I see it again in our minutes and in our conversations when we talk, one of the other challenges I put forward to Ronda as the chairman and to the board was to look at state media, look at TTT, and see where we fit in a modern entertainment landscape, right? How are people engaging in content? How are people creating, putting it out? How does the population, again, not just in Trinidad, my thing is that we have learned, and especially in the last 2.5 years, how small this world is. Yeah? We have learned how something could happen hundreds, thousands of miles away could impact you 2 days later. Yeah? So where does TTT see itself while building local content, while creating or recreating, reigniting a true national identity? Where does it see itself in terms of a global position? And those things, when you look at quality, when you are, and very right, Ronda, when you look at your own internal processes, ensuring that you have an organization that is fit for purpose, that has the right people in the right jobs, and that you have designated those jobs in a way that is not looking backwards but looking forward. So a production manager 20 years ago would not have had the skill sets that a production manager now would have. So things like that, ensuring that you have a right-sized organization, ensuring that you are true to your mandate, that you are true to the mandate of state media, that you understand your responsibility to the population. And once you do that, sustainability will come, and after that, profitability will come.
Ms. Francis, closing thoughts.
So we've come a long way from since we were first appointed in 2020, when the board was first appointed. And we've moved through a stabilization plan, which we found necessary at the time, since the organization had gone through so much changes and it had impacted the morale within the organization. So we felt that developing the stabilization plan would have settled the organization. And as we settled the organization, we moved to the point where we are now doing the strategic plan. This is going to take us straight into the future, and we have done a number of activities, and we've done a number of programs that is going to future-proof the organization, where we will become sustainable and profitable as we move into the next 5 years.
Minister, final thoughts.
Firstly, thank you for inviting me here. It was an absolute pleasure. I was really happy to bring Chairman Parsanlal as well as Chairman Francis here to speak about what is happening in the various arms of OPM communications. I hope that the persons who have tuned in and who will see this afterwards have a better idea of what we are not only doing, what we hope to do, and what we see our role as being. And I think we have ventilated everything else that we could ventilate. Thank you so much. And I remain continually optimistic about what OPM Communications can deliver to the population, to what NALIS can, what TTT can, National Archives, my information division, and our government printry. I am always optimistic, and I look forward to being line minister for the foreseeable future.
But let me thank you so much for joining us on this week's episode. Ms. Francis, let me also thank you for joining us. And of course, Mr. Parsanlal, thank you all for joining us on this week's episode of Delving Deeper. Join us at the same time next week for another edition of Delving Deeper. I am Kimberly D'Souza, and on behalf of our entire crew, have a good night.